Poland is, after Germany, the country that has received the most Ukrainian refugees during the war. Despite the tremendous cultural similarity and sharing the same enemy, child to the bear, Polish rejection of Ukrainian immigration has grown in recent months. What if I told you that this isn't just because of the typical, they're going to take our jobs, but there's also a historical resentment that goes back to the worst crime ever committed by Ukrainians in history? What if I told you Ukrainians aren't the only ones who want to move to Poland? In fact, the vast majority of immigrants to this growing country are people from all over the world who have already realized the tremendous potential that Poland has. It's not just that we're already witnessing how it's gaining relevance on a geopolitical, military, and economic level, but today is the most opportune moment. In addition, salaries and quality of life are on the rise. Colombians, the cost of living in Poland could be up to 30% cheaper than in some Latin American countries. Maintaining a level of development comparable to developed countries like Portugal, Lithuania, or Saudi Arabia, according to the list of countries by Human Development Index. Have you thought about it? Or am I convincing you, but you have no idea how to start? Don't worry, Living Poland is here to help you. At Living Poland, you'll find the best experts in legal advice for your arrival in Poland. Work or study? Maybe Living Poland will study your case and accompany you from the first consultation until you adapt to the country. And since you're a follower of El Mapa de Sebas, I have great news for you. Contact the WhatsApp number or email that I'll put in the description and first comment. Tell them you're reaching out in my name and you'll get a completely free first consultation. No obligation to ask. Take advantage today before Poland becomes a powerhouse, because later it might be too late, and it could become as complicated as emigrating to Germany or France. Focus on your own tasks. Living Poland will handle the rest. Going back to our topic, how was it when Ukraine was the perpetrator and not the victim? Are you interested? All right, then stay until the end of the video. Thank you. As always, let's go back to the background, and for this, it would be good to mention the historical relationship between the Polish people. A people who, at their height, occupied all this territory when it was known as the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and the Ukrainians, a group of Eastern Slavs who did not form any fully independent state until the 20th century. It turns out that during the expansions of the Polish and Lithuanians, after their dynastic union, they took over all of Belarus and the vast majority of present-day Ukraine. Both peoples of Eastern Slavs were known as the Ruthenians. And over time, they began to develop their own identity, of course different from the Russian or Polish one. Although they had freedom of religion and language, Ukrainian separatist attempts did happen. The most representative one was that of Bohdan Chmelnytsky, through which the Hetmanate Cossack state was created, a state that paid tribute to Russia and that some consider to be the first Ukrainian state. The point is that after the partitions of Poland, which put an end to the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, in 1795 the Ukrainian territories were divided between Russia and Austria, the latter under the name of the Kingdom of Galicia and Lodomeria. Remember this name. And do you think the Poles were just going to sit quietly without their own state, having once been such a tremendous power? Well, no way. Although there were attempts, like during the Kosciuszko Uprising, the Napoleonic Wars, or the Krakow Uprising, Poland didn't regain its full independence until World War I. And of course, they weren't just going to settle for leaving the Ukrainian territories to Russia, or in this case, to the newly formed Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, right? The main event that concerns us? Three conflicts that are quite intertwined: the Polish-Soviet War of 1919 and the Ukrainian War of Independence, both within the context of the Russian Civil War. So you don't get confused, because this was really a mess, as my Argentine friends would say. I'll try to be as concise as possible. With Moscow weakened after its defeat in the Great War, both Ukrainians and Poles saw an opportunity to redeem themselves. Ukrainian nationalists proclaimed the Ukrainian People's Republic, which split into factions. For Lenin, an independent Ukraine was simply unacceptable. In 1917, they launched a first invasion to establish the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, which could not be contained, especially because the country was divided into factions. And the Poles, led by the famous Józef Pilsudski, wanted to restore the greatness of Poland. Recovering the Ukrainian territories was not only a historical claim, but also about creating a buffer zone with Russia, their age-old enemy, and the Ukrainians. What a difficult time to think about being free. After 5 years of war, they are unable to maintain their independence. Poles and Soviets signed the Treaty of Riga in 1921. In it, Poland secured control of Bolivia and Galicia. Yes, the one that was once controlled by Austria and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics over the rest of the territory. Now, within the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, neither the Ukrainian leaders, like Simon Petliura, nor the Ukrainian National Republic itself were invited to the negotiating table. The future of the country was decided between Poland and Russia without the participation of the Ukrainians. And what happens when a group of people cannot decide their own destiny? Nothing, but nothing good, you'll see. During the interwar period, more than 5 million Ukrainians came under the rule of the Second Polish Republic. In the midst of the age of nationalism, the Poles, traumatized by having lost so many territories, weren't going to be so lenient with ethnic minorities, were they? The policy from Warsaw towards Ukrainians can be summed up as a deliberate attempt at Polonization. There were restrictive policies against the Ukrainian language and culture. The strongest blow was the Grafsky Law of 1924, which implemented educational reforms requiring the teaching of Polish and relegating Ukrainian to a secondary language. Some Ukrainian Orthodox churches were replaced by Catholic temples, all with a clear goal of transforming Ukrainian identity into Polish identity. Obviously, Ukrainian protests soon followed, so during the 1930s, massive operations continued against Ukrainian activists, which included arbitrary detentions. Like every action, there is a reaction. Many young Ukrainians became radicalized, and nationalist groups began to emerge, the most representative being the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, led by the famous Stepan Bandera. You know, the favorite in pro-Russian rhetoric? I'll tell you why. Later on, the armed wing of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists would be formed, the Ukrainian Insurgent Army or Ukrainian Insurgent Army with strong anti-Polish ideas. In 1939, the German and Soviet invasion of Poland took place for the Poles and for the whole world. A tragedy that marked the beginning of World War II for some Ukrainian nationalists, a golden opportunity. Do you remember what the regions with a Ukrainian majority under the sovereignty of the Second Polish Republic were called, right? Volhynia and Galicia, as they were the easternmost regions. They were initially occupied by the Soviet Union, who persecuted both Ukrainian and Polish activists equally. However, in 1941, Operation Barbarossa began, in which the Nazis completely disregarded the pact with the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. And they occupied the rest of Poland. Germany did nothing more than dismantle the brutal Soviet regime established since the occupation of September 1939, but it did not bring any liberation. Rather, it created a kind of power vacuum in which Ukrainian nationalist movements saw an opportunity to create their own state. The leader of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, Stepan Bandera, was the main figure of Ukrainian nationalism and the favorite of pro-Russian media to justify Putin's narrative of denazifying Ukraine. So here we need to analyze, was Stepan Bandera really a Nazi? First, the facts. Between 1942 and 1943, the Ukrainian insurgent army, the armed wing of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, carried out the act. The key point of this video is the massacre in Volhynia and eastern Galicia, where between 50,000 and 100,000 Poles were massacred using the most brutal methods. Mass killings, the burning of entire villages, and indiscriminate executions of men, women, and children. The reason? Pure harsh ethnic cleansing, which in fact was carried out. The Ukrainian nationalists wiped out the entire Polish population of both regions, aiming to create an ethnically pure state. Was it a massacre? Yes, and the question in the video has already been answered. So, was Bandera a Nazi? Well, let's see. Some members of the Ukrainian insurgent army were trained by the Germans themselves and received weapons at different times. Although the massacres against the Poles began in 1942, they intensified in 1943 when Germany was losing ground on the Eastern Front, which suggests that their activities were independent. In fact, when Bandera unilaterally proclaimed Ukrainian independence in Lviv, he was captured by the Germans and sent to the Sachsenhausen concentration camp, where he remained for much of the war. In conclusion, Germany was not interested in whether Poles died or not. They saw the Ukrainians as support to fight against the Soviets, but they rejected the idea of an independent Ukraine, since those territories were part of their Lebensraum. Bandera did share certain elements with Nazism, such as ethnic ultranationalism, authoritarianism, violence, anti-communism, and anti-Semitism. He could be considered a collaborator, but in a pragmatic sense, aiming to achieve his goal of creating a Ukrainian state at the cost of the massacre of Poles. However, he was betrayed by Germany when he revealed his true goal. In the end, the massacre and the bloodshed of the Poles were all for nothing. Well, as you will know in the future, all the territories ended up being annexed by the Soviet Union after Germany's defeat, and the goal of the Ukrainian state was not achieved. So, as you can see, even though many of us today see Ukrainians as the victims of a war between the interests of two great powers, at the time, they were also perpetrators by carrying out a brutal ethnic cleansing that took the lives of tens of thousands of innocent Polish civilians. The world really does turn around, but now tell me, did you know about this crime committed by Ukraine? Would you consider Stepan Bandera a nationalist or a Nazi collaborator? Don't forget to leave your comment and subscribe to this. Also, I'm leaving my social media links in the description, and in case you want to watch the new videos in premiere and have more interaction with me. Your donations on Patreon, Una Manito Net, or channel memberships are welcome. See you next time.